Relative to the man you want, you are not the prize. You are only the prize relative to the men who want you, and you don't want those guys. And this means that you can't expect to be the adored in this dynamic.
Men are tired. They are waking up and they're realizing that society has been bamboozling them all away. Men are walking away and bankrupting society. Watch the end of the video to fully understand the implications of this, how men are bankrupting society, and how this will affect women's society and men going forward. Before we begin, today's video is brought to us by the China Unvarnished channel. Their channel will be linked in the description. And now let's just go ahead and jump right into the video.
我在18岁挣到200块钱的时候，我就意识到打工是永远没有出路的。
When I was 18 years old, I earned 200 yuan, and at that moment, I realized that working a job was not a way out. During my university years, I attended a wedding, and the opportunity to host this event was recommended to me by a classmate. When I arrived at the venue, I overheard some guests discussing the wedding's expenses, which shockingly totaled over 600,000 yuan. The decorations, flowers, and various setups were stunning, with just one table's meal cost exceeding 5,000 yuan. I thought to myself that if I wanted to host a wedding worth 600,000 yuan, I would need to host at least over 3,000 similar weddings to gather that amount. After the wedding, the newlyweds were very satisfied with my performance, and specifically told me that the 1,000 yuan spent was well worth it. In fact, my classmate earned 800 yuan and left me with 200 yuan. This experience made me realize that if you master resources, you can earn 600,000 yuan just by introducing weddings, even if you don't host them. Nevertheless, I firmly chose to enter the broadcasting industry and became a host because I love this field. Although I knew the industry's prospects were not optimistic, I also opened my own noodle shop. Returning to the topic of 600,000 yuan, I thought at that time that if I opened a noodle shop, it would take at least a year to achieve such revenue. However, now my shop is doing well, and people might question the authenticity of these figures, thinking it's impossible. I warmly welcome everyone to come to my shop and observe every transaction. During university, I audited a lecture on political economics, where the lecturer explained the nature of wages in simple and understandable terms. The main purpose of wages is to ensure the basic survival of workers and their families while helping capitalists create more surplus value. Therefore, if you plan to achieve a class leap through wages, it is nearly impossible.
Now, I also want to show you something that's popped up, because men around the world now are getting pissed off. Men in Western society, men in China. This is becoming a global phenomenon in Western and Westernized societies. And now these are the policies that men are putting into place. No marriage, no protecting and providing for women, no military service, no saving society. Go your own way, be a free man, live for yourself, brothers. This is what's happening right now. This is the message that that Chinese men are saying right now, and men in Western society in the United States, United Kingdom, Australia. All of these men are concluding just to go your own way. Save your money. You can live off the interest. You can live very, very easily if you do not get married, do not have children, and give money and provide utility to a society, to a country that hates you. I saw a video on the Wisdom Warriors channel, and I think that this channel, what he's saying on the channel really envisions what's going on with men right now, because it's quite profound, because men in reality are quitting on society as we speak and prioritizing themselves and their own well-being.
Today, I want to talk about why men are going their own way, why a lot of men are abandoning their families or abandoning trying to date or relationships, why community is failing and patriotism or shared social bonds are getting destroyed. It comes down to ownership. Now, I might be canceled for this video, but hear me out. If a man doesn't feel ownership in the land, in his family, in his tribe or village, he will not be inspired to accept responsibility for that thing. For instance, if I was starting a business and I wanted someone to be an A player for me, someone to be high up in the business, to be a great leader, to really help the business flourish, what would I do? I would give them a ownership role. I would give them a share of the company. right? It's the same thing in society. If you want participants, really good citizens, if you want men to overcome their lower nature and rise to truly masculine and beautiful men and leaders, you need to give them ownership, or else they're going to say fuck it. So the main impulse within most men is towards freedom. We don't want to be tied down to all of these obligations and responsibilities to our village, to the nation, to our job, to our family. Like, we just want to wander freely, right? A lot of men do. And society and cultures in the ancient world coped with this will towards freedom within men by offering them ownership, by offering them authority. And this ownership is what created citizens. And this is really important. This is what my last video is about. Bear with me if you're feeling triggered.
Now, men, I want you to take into consideration what I've constantly told you about when it comes to the Roman Empire and the fall of the Roman Empire. At the beginning of the Roman Empire, they were thriving. The average Roman citizen did not have to work. What ultimately ended up happening was a series of unfortunate events, kind of like the book. Only in this case, the world comes to an end in some sort of ways. So basically, the Roman Empire is thriving, men have full ownership over society, and then someone gets the idea that, hey, we should begin giving women expanded rights within society and privileges, like no-fault divorce. So they institute no-fault divorce, and women begin rapidly divorcing their husbands and running off with gladiators. The status of men begins to fall in society, and men begin to walk away and refuse to subsidize the living of women who do not love them, who do not want them, and who basically want to just run around with Chad and Tyrone. These women did not even want to raise their children. They began offsetting the responsibility of raising their children to nannies, who were typically slaves. So men basically say this is bullshit, and they begin walking away. Fast forward just a little bit, the empire gets pissed off and says that you men are worse than all of the criminals in the entirety of the Roman Empire, because men begin refusing to subsidize the living of women. Women who are cheating on them, women who are divorcing them, women who are treating them poorly. And, and keep in mind the issue of paternity. They are raising children that may not even be theirs. And the empire is like, listen, don't complain about it, just do as we tell you to do. All right, little bro? Just do as you're told to do, and don't ask questions. So the men in society basically say, fuck that. We're just going to walk away, and they're punished for it. They're barred from going to public events. They're barred from going to the Colosseum. They're barred from going to public shows. They're barred from everything. They're also punished. Some of the punishments include making them run, single men run, chain gang style during the winter. Okay? So if you don't get married, you don't get any entertainment. So they take away video games, they take away television, they take away wrestling, and they make Roman society a miserable place to live for men. So you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, and men just basically say, fuck it, we'll just live in this tortured reality and stay home, which is what's happening in Western society now. Within 100 years, there's no more value being created in the empire. Men have given up on their jobs. They're no longer maintaining society. No more engineers. They're no longer serving in the military. And all of the resources of the Roman Empire are being used to subsidize the living of women. So where are those resources coming from? Well, because men have now walked away from society, they're using entirely slave labor. They're using slave doctors. So, for example, they'll go to another country and they'll capture men who are doctors, and they'll force them as slaves to work as doctors within their empire. Teachers, they'll go and they'll capture educators and they'll force them. Do you see where we're going with this? So basically, because the empire collapses, they don't have any way of sustaining itself, so they go around looking for the best and brightest in the known world, and then they just enslave those people. Of course, they cannot use them to fight in the military, and Roman literature explicitly states, do not use slave labor to fight in the military, because these people can not only can they turn against you, but they can end up gaining so much power that they can then take the empire from you. There's a bunch of reasons. Because why would slaves want to fight for their masters? Okay, if they become too guys, they have every reason to turn against you and every reason to take over the empire and say, okay, so you were the ones who were doing this to us. All right, you know. So anyway, eventually the barbarians come by, and what the emperor is doing is now they're basically taking whatever resources they have to try to pay the barbarians, but they have nothing. All right, because everything is used to subsidize the living of women in the empire, and men are no longer fighting for the empire or producing any real value. Well, they offer the barbarians, they start offering them land to protect the empire. The barbarians protect the empire from the barbarians themselves. Do you see the stupidity? The barbarians realize that the empire cannot protect itself, and they're just trying to use maneuvering. They have no money, they have nothing whatsoever. They have they just have a bunch of women who are just living off the empire and men who've given up on society. So the barbarians basically pillage the empire. They call the emperor's bluff, like, okay, you have no military, you don't have money, you have nothing. We can just come in and take everything. So they pillage the empire, and we are plunged into 1,000 years of darkness. The status of women fell heavily during that period of time, and women basically ended up, imagine living in caves and eating squirrel meat again. But of course, the fall of the Roman Empire, there were actually two segments of the Roman Empire. So there was another part of the Roman Empire that did survive. However, it was kind of like night and day. Also, the part of the empire that fell was the part that had most of our technology, like engineering, building aqueducts. I mean, all of this like advanced engineering and mathematics. So we lost all of that shit. In fact, in modern day society, we cannot even replicate we still can't replicate most of it. That's how bad it is. So when the Roman Empire fell, and we were plunged into 1,000 years of darkness, most of Europe was, basically women ended up working in the fields again, except they had alongside men. So they ended up having to do things like field labor, but they had a much lower status. So they basically were serfs. They had no rights, no privileges. It was a horrible time for women. And all of this happened as a result of women demanding more rights and simps deciding that, oh, well, we need to continually expand the rights and privileges of women. This is how, guys, simps and women who wanted their empowerment, all right, are what ultimately led to the fall of the Roman Empire, plunging us into 1,000 years of darkness. And it's very much, and a lot of that also resulted in what we know as the bubonic plague, which pillaged Europe and could have ended humanity. Yeah, all of this because of women's liberation and men basically saying, well, we have no ownership in society, so we'll just walk away. That's why I told you MWA is the pinnacle of all of this, because you have MWA is just men with alternatives. So you have men who will say, well, MGTOW is my best alternative. So I'll go and become a man going my own way and separate myself from relationships and society. Or I might become a passport king and go overseas and find a woman overseas, or just live comfortably over there by myself. So basically I'll abandon my land. I'll abandon my country. Or I'll go into my soft guy era, and if a woman wants to be with me, she's going to have to subsidize my living and bring something of value. So this is all MWA, men with alternatives. But without a country without its men is not a country. A country without its men is a wasteland. And a man that does not have love for country or family will fight for neither.
Citizenship is when you own a long-term stake within a larger project, right? So let's say you're in a village, okay? And you own a piece of land in that village. And your kids are probably going to inherit that piece of land. And on top of that, you feel like you have great ownership of your family. You're more of the patriarch of your family. Therefore, how are you going to treat your family, and how are you going to treat the land? A lot of modern people will be like, oh, he's going to abuse them and all these things. It's like, no, that's the exception to the rule. The main rule would be you would try to see that whole thing flourish. A father generally wants to see the best for their kids. A father who owns the land is going to pass it down generations, wants to see the best of that land, is probably going to build it up in some way. And on top of that, you are going to want the best for your community. You're going to go and participate in governance. You're going to try to be a good citizen to your neighbors. You're going to build community and build relationships because it's meaningful to you, because you have a long-term stake in the whole, right? When you take away the man's role at the head of the family, or you take away the man's role in terms of private land ownership, right? You take away his sense of having a long-term stake in something. Therefore, his nurturing, he doesn't feel inspired to take responsibility for it because it has less meaning for him, okay?
So a central message that you hear women talking about, and the state will increasingly talk about, is men not wanting to take responsibility of anything anymore. And you hear women saying this as men choosing not to marry, date, have relationships. She's saying that these women are like, oh, men don't want to be responsible. Men don't want to take responsibility. Why would a man want to take responsibility for something that he does not have ownership over or authority over? Okay? A man who is forced to take responsibility for something that he has no authority over or ownership over is a slave. You're told that you're going to be responsible for this, or we're going to punish you if you don't. That's a slave. So men do not want to slave for a society where they do not have any stake in it. Men have been pushed out of society by women, and by women, by simps, by the state. The state wants all the cookies for itself, but it still needs men to keep the lights on and to basically keep running things. And it does that by saying, well, if you want to survive, if you want to have a roof over your head and food in your belly, you're going to have to do these things. The authority over women transferred from men to the state. Women sold out men for the state. So the state has ultimate ownership and authority over this group of people now. Do not forget that at one time, women were considered under the authority of men. Okay? So the man had ultimate authority over his wife. He had ultimate authority over his children. He had ownership. That authority and that ownership has now been passed to the state. So the man, his only role in society, as far as the state is concerned, is to function as a slave and to have as much of his resources reallocated, taken away from him, and given to the state. When a man is incarcerated, this is the reason why they like to incarcerate men for longer, because they absolutely hate men, and women operate as agents of the state, while men are only used for their resources until they are depleted and discarded. So even when he's incarcerated, the state is still reallocating wealth and resources from tax revenue to keep that man incarcerated. So in reality, it only costs, they're only spending, let's say, a couple $1,000s a year to keep him incarcerated, but they'll write it off as like 120,000. Oh, we need $120,000 to keep this violent offender locked up. $120,000 per prisoner? What did this person go to prison for? He went to prison for stealing and some other stuff. You realize it would just be easier to let little bro out, give him a nice place to live, give him a monthly allowance, give him a car, okay, and the option of working, than keeping him incarcerated. You see where we're going, guys? So no matter how it goes, the state will always find a way to extract wealth and resources from men, and women operate as agents of the state. The purpose of women in terms of the state is to reallocate wealth and resources from men through a variety of means, that through civil court, through family court, through criminal court, through divorce court. It doesn't matter how they do it. The state will always incentivize it and reward it, and they will continually lower the bar for doing so. This is the reason why the state pushed things like M2, This is the reason why the state pushed things like Believe All Women. This is the reason why the state backs women in doing these things, because they don't care how women do it. They just care that women are doing it. And they will ultimately reward women for doing it by making it, by always, being on their side, because the state controls the courts, the state controls public opinion, the state controls everything that we see, everything that we hear is controlled by the state. And what is the state? The state is essentially owned by the large corporations. The state in and of itself is a corporation. You might think it's a joke. Nope. Going back to 1800s, if you go back to the 1800s, the state basically changed. It is no longer a democracy or a republic. It's supposed to be a republic. It is a corporation. Okay? This is the reason why cities can go bankrupt. This is why, guys, cities have lots of debt right now, and they basically sell bonds, and those bonds are junk, essentially. The state sells bonds, and those bonds are essentially becoming junk now. We haven't been a country in a very long time. We are a corporation. It is a 100% corporation. And the stakeholders, basically the citizens, are now nothing more than consumers. Consumers and opportunities for the state to reallocate wealth and resources from them to enrich itself. Men pay 80% of all taxes, while women make 80% of all consumer purchases. What does that tell you? That tells you that the state cannot survive without men. As more men are waking up and realizing that they don't need to play this game anymore, that it is more realistic to just walk away from the state begins to fall apart. The state cannot survive without men. And you have simps who are like, we do not need a strong military. We do not need the US dollar will never collapse. Guys, these men are of the devil. These men are weak men. When everything goes to hell, do you think these men are going to be protecting themselves? They're going to come running and looking for other men to protect them. It doesn't matter how big you are. It doesn't matter how strong you are. Guys, it's all about the mind. How strong is your mind? How strong is your mind, and how much are you willing to say, no, these are the things that I believe in, and I'm open to listen to other views and points if I choose to. But you're not going to tell me and dictate what I can think. Look at the UK right now, what they're doing with the manosphere, where boys and men will now have to live in fear. Where if you are even suspected of being susceptible to the influence of of extreme misogyny or the manosphere or the Tates, as a boy, your teacher is now obligated to report you to the Department of Terrorism, and you will be hauled off and have your human rights stripped away from you. That's thought policing. That's communism, Marxism, authoritarianism 101. 1984. Just to be very clear with you, it was not a story simply of the future. It was a story of the past. It was written in 1949, 75 years ago. These things have already happened. And when I say they've already happened, I don't mean back in the 1800s. I'm talking about thousands of years ago. The Roman Empire, while it was known as the greatest empire ever, let's just be very clear, there were many other empires before the Roman Empire. Great empires, technological empires, empires with significant political systems. And these tactics were used throughout many of them. This is nothing new. Despite the being able to surveil us, use technology to increase surveillance, they had other ways of doing it back then. The more things change, the more they stay the same. Okay? The powers that be, basically the ones who want all the toys for themselves, trying to control humanity for their own greed and out of a lot of times boredom.
Now, I'm not trying to advocate for, maybe outdated and roles of masculinity. I'm just trying to paint a picture of human nature for people out there. Is that when people feel like they have ownership in something, they're going to take responsibility in that thing because it has meaning for them. And let's talk about this politically and geopolitically in terms of democracy versus monarchy. Man, we're going heretical in this video, aren't we? Drop a like if you like this kind of content. So, the Middle Ages saw a lot of monarchies, kingdoms, and aristocracies, right? And there's been a massive wave of propaganda in the past 100 years from liberal democracy saying that the Middle Ages were all dark and kings were like these conniving, greedy, fat fools who were just in it for themselves. And this is not true. You can go see Thinking West, a YouTuber's video on this. But the monarchies of the past, in general, tended to be okay, if not good. Of course, there was bad kings and bad ones, just like there's bad men, okay? But in that, the patriarch, the monarch, the king, he feels ownership for his entire kingdom, meaning that he is thinking generations ahead because he wants his kingdom to thrive. He's not going to overtax the peasants because he wants them to be more productive, to have better lives, so they multiply and increase the will to power of the entire kingdom. You see, the main instinct of life is to increase the feeling of power in life. And this is a very Nietzschean philosophy. And the feeling of power has nothing to do with control. It has everything to do with vitality, an increased feeling of life and expansiveness here on earth, a mastery of open space. And so the king is going to be thinking, a good king is thinking generations ahead. He's trying to, how can my people be more productive and live happier lives so they multiply and increase the power of the nation, right? And he's thinking this way because he wants to pass down this kingdom to his children, who he also feels to be a part of himself.
You see, modern women have nothing to offer today. They have nothing to offer men. Men, on the other hand, will always have to either step their game up or they won't be able to survive. Men have to succeed or they don't survive. Women, on the other hand, they're basically born millionaires. And they get a credit card at 18 that they start charging, and they get everything for free. Society gives them everything. Men give them everything. They live on easy mode. Okay? Most of you guys do not understand the concept of this. Women have men buying them drinks, buying them food, paying their rent, paying their phone, paying their bills, subsidizing their living, taking them on date. Guys, this all adds up. All the doors that are open for women, it all adds up. All right? In the government, most money for healthcare is spent on women. Most men do not go to the doctor constantly. Women are the ones who essentially overwhelm the healthcare system. If men ever began using the healthcare system the way that women use the healthcare system, it would collapse. It would absolutely collapse. All right? Women basically are like, it's all about me, 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 me. It's about this, it's about that. If my pinky hurts, there needs to be a study done on it. That's the society that we live in. Men, on the other hand, are more practical. Women basically are at a point where they believe that men are obligated to do things for them and obligated to take care of them because you're simply born a man. The concept of being a man today is to be a slave, to do whatever you're told and don't ask questions, to accept that you are hated and that you will be gaslit and that's it. Women view men as a lower species to them. They view themselves as higher, and they view men as lower. They believe that men are obligated to do these things, while women are supposed to know that they are goddesses on earth. This is a sick notion. I talk about the golden V, the concept of the golden V, and why, there's going to be the great collapse of the golden V, the great V collapse, and it's coming. What does that mean? It means that women are going to find themselves in elevated states of poverty, destitution, and extraordinary amounts of hardship as men increasingly walk away from society, and the state cannot subsidize the living of women anymore. Cannot subsidize the full expenses of women. You have to understand, the state does not actually care about women. The state simply allows women to operate as agents of the state because the state has ultimate authority over women now, and children because the authority was taken away from men and given to the state. Women betrayed men. And the deal is simply this. The more money that women are able to extract from men and reallocate to the state, the more money that women will receive for themselves. Because when you have a divorce court and women get all of this money in divorce court, the state gets a cut of that. In family court, all of the child support cases, guys, the state takes out a loan on 18 years of child support against the man. That's the reason why it's very hard to discharge child support payments, because the state takes out a loan on that money. Okay? So you are now contracted for 18 years as 18 years a slave. This is insane stuff. The state operates on the notion that the man solely exists to benefit the state. And the state absolutely hates men, because men are the only ones who have the ability to stand up to tyranny and to challenge the state. And of course, the state does not want to be challenged whatsoever. You guys are starting to get it now, right? And guys, just want to remind you to check out the Angry Guy Clubhouse, dive into exclusive podcasts, manosphere topics, and more. Free subscribers get full access to chat, videos, podcasts, and all posts. Paid subscribers unlock unlimited access to everything, including exclusive guides and blueprints for building wealth and thriving. Support the channel by becoming a paid subscriber for just $8 per month. Don't miss out. Click the link in the description to subscribe now and claim your free passive income blueprint. Women chose to betray men. Women chose the state. And now men are choosing to walk away. And Western society will soon become a wasteland. What do you guys think regarding all of this? Do you agree that women are heading for a reality of increased poverty, destitution, and hardship as more men walk away from society? Let me know your thoughts and we'll talk about it in the comments. Like the video if you like it. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you like the video, share the video. And just remember that all roads lead to MWA, men walking away. And cheers.